the Global CISO Virtual Summit closing keynote and the Innovation Spotlight podcast. I would like to get right to things and introduce David Spark, who has graciously agreed to bring his talents to our closing keynote. And he's got some fun things planned over the next half hour, so we're just going to let David take it away. David?
Thank you so much, Tom, and hello, everybody. And I see the Innovation Spotlight podcast. That's what we're doing right now. Before we start, I'm just going to give you the lowdown. If any of you have heard the CISO Security Vendor Relationship podcast, we are going to do a special episode of just that right now, complete with all fun sound effects. So I'm just going to get my two guests ready. Matt and David, you guys are ready. Matt, you're going to be queued up as soon as I play this sound effect. So Matt, you ready? He's ready. Okay, everybody, we're going to begin now.
10-second security tip. Go.
When presenting to a CISO, always remember that they're business leaders first. Aim to understand their business and the challenges that they face and present your solutions accordingly.
It's time to begin the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode of the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast, recorded in front of a live crowd. Oh, I'm so excited about this. Listen to that. Oh, my God. It's so overwhelming. I can't take it. I mean, and they said being in front of a real live audience was going to be better. I much prefer the virtual audience. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are, for those who are listening to the podcast right now, we are at Evanta's 2020 Global CISO Virtual Executive Summit, which, as I said, is way better than being at the Ritz-Carlton in Arizona, where we all were supposed to be prior to COVID. This is a bonus episode of the podcast in which we are focusing on innovation. Prior to this live event, we all watched presentations of 3 companies, all claiming to be innovative. We will bring them on one by one. We will summarize their presentations, and then, along with my two guests, we will critique and answer the ultimate question: is this innovative, and is it something that security practitioners want? Today's bonus episode is sponsored by Evanta. They're running this darn event, and our 3 competitors, which are Zero North, Okira, and Blue Lava. But first, let me introduce my two guests who will be joining me in this critical showdown. They are, first, David Tyburski, CISO for Wynn Resorts, and Matt Crouse, CISO of Taco Bell. Give them some love. Oh, they're so thrilled to see both of you. Oh, I had no idea it would be this exciting. All right. Before we bring on our first guest, let's just start with a very open question. I'll start with you, Matt, first. What makes a security vendor's product innovative?
What makes a security vendor's product innovative, to me, is solving a challenge that I didn't even know that I had. That's something when a vendor can bring value to me, when they can teach me something about my business, they can teach me something about my security posture, when they bring things that they're seeing in the marketplace that I haven't seen before.
That is excellent. Let's keep that in mind as we look at these 3 competitors. David Tyburski, same question to you. What makes a security vendor's product innovative?
Well, I have to agree with Matt on that. I mean, something you didn't think about, but also something that makes my life easier. Does it save money? Does it save time? Does it save something else that I can't get back any other way? So not just something I didn't know about, but what is it? How do I get benefit out of it?
Excellent. And where do you think, I'm going to ask both of you, where do you think security desperately needs innovation?
From my perspective, from my perspective, I mean, I think one of the things we've got to do is make security simpler for the user community. So it's some of the things that we try to preach here at Wynn. The users are very talented people. They have very great careers in multitudes of other areas, but we need to remember they're not always security professionals. So we need to make security the easiest solution that they can choose, because people will always take the path of least resistance. So if security is the easiest thing they can do, then it's the thing they'll always do.
Good point. Matt, what do you got to add to that?
Took the words right out of my mouth, David. That's exactly what I was going to say. One of our biggest challenges anywhere we are is always driving a culture of security awareness. And that means that everybody understands the risk that they bring into the environment and how they need to go about mitigating that risk and what they need to do. And we need to be seen as partners, not impediments to the business moving forward. So making everything easier, simpler, faster for my, marketing team, my legal team, teams who aren't security professionals, makes my job easier and makes the whole company much safer.
All right, excellent. All right, and I'm going to, very last thing, it has to do with the presentations itself. When you get a startup comes to present to you, I'll start with you, Matt. What are you looking for when you get a presentation? Like, when this presentation's over, I better see this. What?
I better see return on what I'm going to invest. None of these tools are cheap. They're always asking for quite a bit of money. It's worth the investment only if it's worth the investment. And so I have to see that right up front. How is this going to move the needle for me? And how can I explain this to my executive leadership team who is really footing the bill for this all? The other thing that I'm really looking for in my business is always scalability. And we are a global company. We have 7,000 restaurants in the Taco Bell brand alone. If you combine that with the rest of Yum, our parent company, we're actually the largest restaurant company in the world. And each individual restaurant needs its own security solution. So I'm looking for scalability and return on investment.
All right. And last for you, David, just before we bring in our first guest, what are you looking for out of the presentations?
So I'm looking for, in some ways, ease of use. How's it going to make our lives better? Right? I mean, we're bombarded every day with, threats and risks and users and everything you can think of. And the last thing we need is more of the same. We need things that reduce all that take something out, make our lives easier. At some point in my career, I'd like to be able to just sit back, relax, and get paid, but it hadn't happened yet. I'm working on it.
All right. With that, that is our guest time. That is bringing on our first guest. So please, Chris, can we bring in John Worrell, who's the CEO of Zero North. And Matt, I would like you, and John, please turn on your camera as well and unmute your microphone. Matt, you saw this presentation, yes, from Zero North? All right. I want to know in your words, I don't want to hear John say it because I want to know your digestion of it. What was this presentation? What was this company, Zero North?
Zero North, the presentation that I watched taught me that they were trying to bridge the cultural divide between security and DevOps.
High level, how do you think the presentation described that?
They described that, they were trying to make security consumable to development communities, make it something that development teams can understand, can action upon immediately.
And could you visualize how that was going to be done through the presentation?
Yeah. Yes.
Good. Could you visualize it for me? How would that be actually done?
They were doing that through hooks that they had in their application, through reviews, through vulnerabilities that have surfaced, and a presentation that made that very easy for the development teams to absorb, to understand in terms and language that they would be able to work with immediately.
All right. And before I bring you, John, in to say something, David Tyburski, I know you didn't get a chance, unfortunately, to see this presentation, but application security, I'm sure, or essentially a DevOps security environment, getting security involved in DevOps, I'm sure is a great concern. Yes, David?
Absolutely. Yes.
So what do you look for in a solution in this space?
So, this is where we've got to be able to make it, again, we go back to ease of use. The developer community has to be able to implement it, use it, and build out what we need from a business perspective without it being cumbersome and be able to ensure that they're accomplishing the goals of the business as much as protecting the business.
All right. I'm going to throw this now to John Worrell, who is the CEO of Zero North. John.
Hi, David.
So thank you so much for joining us. So here's what I want to know. Where is the simplicity in your solution?
I guess the simplicity is trying to take all the complexity in the app scanning tools you're using now and make that, number one, better, make it cheaper, make it faster. So instead of trying to figure out what all that data means, let our system take care of all the vulnerability data coming out of these different tools. So your AppSec team really understands where your risks are, so you can understand where your risk is. and compressing those issues down just to the ones that developers really need to fix so they get the ease of use on that as well.
All right. Now, I'm going to make something critical. I personally had a hard time visualizing your product. I personally have written a lot about this subject, about application security. So help me visualize Matt mentioned that there are hooks in here. What are these hooks, and how are they different than what many are trying to do today?
So think of us as security as a service that parallels all of your DevOps pipelines.
Okay.
And our hooks are simply the ability to orchestrate and automate the scans so they can happen on a continuous basis. They can happen automatically without your humans getting involved, without your AppSec team kicking all of them off. Mm-hmm. The policy for all those scans can be managed in our system, so you don't have to manage it in multiple different tools, right? And once those scans kick off, everything is orchestrated and automated, so all the data is collected automatically. It's normalized automatically. It's prioritized based on your business input, your business parameters, so that you can actually look at our dashboard or your own dashboard and find out where the vulnerabilities I really care about right now.
And is there a mechanism, and I believe you did mention this in your presentation, that if I have some Jira ticketing system that I can automatically put a single thing, if there is a scan that pops up a vulnerability, I can send that to an engineer to deal with that. Yes? Something like that?
Exactly right. We integrate with Jira, ServiceNow, things like that. You bet.
All right. Excellent. David and Matt, do you have any questions for our guest, John Worrell, CEO of Zero North?
Certainly. So developers they're in and out of code all day through, code libraries, code review. Are you integrating as well into those code libraries for back end looks? How are you pulling that data out to address those things?
So think of it this way, is that we're going to sit as an orchestration layer on top of whatever scanning tools you're going to use. So if you want to scan at check-in into the repository, that's what you're going to do. So as soon as that code is checked in, we can kick off the scan based again on your policy, whether it's scheduled or check-in or whatever the event is. And the results of that will be in our system and will be combined, compressed with all the other data we have and ticket issued out to the developer. The key thing here is the developer doesn't have to know we exist, right? So your SRE team will integrate this into your pipeline, do that once, right? And the rest of the integration with our data or the interface with our data for the developer is all through their existing ticketing system. They don't have to know anything else about us.
Okay. And I'm assuming you help them, because developers sometimes don't know good ways to be secure. So I'm assuming you give them code samples and other ways to make sure that they're doing the right things.
So we're going to do a couple things. I think that first and foremost is we're going to take all the data that we get from multiple tools. So if you're going to scan at code check-in, you're going to scan your container environment, you're going to use static and SCA as well as your production environment. We're going to pull all that together, and we're going to compress those issues down to the ones that really, really matter. So the ticket the developer might get would be, hey, listen, this is one ticket. If you update this particular library you're using to a more recent version, these other 32 issues will go away. So it's fairly prescriptive that says this one is the one out of date. How they want to handle that, whether they choose a different one or update that one, that's up to them.
Certainly.
All right, I'm signaling the end of this segment. Thank you very, very much, John Worrell, CEO of Zero North. That was excellent, by the way. I felt you handled our questions beautifully. So
thank you very much.
That also indicates, by the way, that is the end of the first period. That brings us to our second period of our three-period hockey game here. And we want to bring in our next guest. It is Nick Halsey, CEO of Okira. Can we bring Nick on? Nick is coming on. All right. While Nick is coming on, I'm going to ask you, Matt, again. Could you summarize Okira's solution for us? What was your take from it, Matt?
Okira's solution is they're aiming to resolve problems with data governance, specifically data access management, which is critically important in a lot of businesses today as data becomes more and more regulated throughout different regions and different parts of the world. So they're aiming to govern who can access the data, what data they can access and when, and then the other levels of data governance and security that surround that.
Yes, and discovery was a key aspect as well. All right, so let me ask this. Nick, I'm going to throw this straight to Nick, though. I have seen a lot of solutions on data discovery and also data governance as well. I'm going to ask you, Nick, what makes your solution unique? And I'll also throw out the word innovative.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. And I think what makes us unique and innovative is that we provide a consistent, universal, secure data access layer that works across all data platforms, whether they're on-prem, in the public cloud, in a private cloud, so that you can define a policy once and it will be applied consistently across all data platforms and deployment environments.
And that's where you feel some of your competitors are falling short because they're only sort of application specific or cloud container specific?
That's right. Up to this point, you've had sort of platform-specific tooling. It might be Sentry or Ranger and Hadoop or some of the AWS-specific tools, but that's not the real world we live in. We live in a world where you've got multiple databases. Some of them are in the cloud, some of them are on-prem. You need to be able to define a policy once and have it be applied consistently, whether you're accessing data in Snowflake or Hadoop or DB2, whatever it might be. You need to have those policies consistent across all of the data for all of the users.
Let me throw this to you. I got to assume that these are problems that you struggle with. And by the way, one of the things that I like that you mentioned, Nick, was duplicate data, which I know that we all have problems with. David Tyburski, discovery of data, rogue data, duplicate data, not having policies attached to data, I got to assume, are all of the above issues?
Of course not. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, yes. I mean, the data is pervasive, and especially in our worlds with the resort that we operate, we have multitudes of different applications and different processes that it takes to run our organization. And every time we bring in a new process or we launch a new feature, we've got a new data source and it's something else. And so being able to manage those data sources across that, and in what I was looking at was bringing in a new source, right? Not just being able to manage it, but have those policies applied without having to reinvent the wheel was where I thought there was some good innovation there.
And Matt, you saw the presentation. I'm assuming you've looked at other solutions in this space as well. What did you like about Okira's presentation?
Universally, like Nick said, we've got data stores in just about every technology under the sun. And I like that it applies to all of them because, as you can imagine, a company our scale, I don't even know all of the technologies that are out there in the environment storing data. So I really appreciated that, and I appreciated the fact that it will go out and discover the rogue data for me and come back and allow me an opportunity to apply policy to that, to organize that, to secure that data.
For this question to you, and I know this is a concern of both of our guests, is the issue of speed of deployment, usability and scale. So how quick can your product be deployed and how widespread? Like you say it can go universally across many data sets. How quickly can it do that? And how deep can those data sets be?
Question, and one of the first things I would talk about, because you were asking the other panelists about how do we make life easier for our customers, and so really three things. One is we will go help you find all of the PII data, that really critical data that's regulated, and show you where it all is in your organization. Then two, we have a graphical policy builder, so you don't have to be a programmer to define the policies. That means you can do something we call distributed stewardship. You can let the people in HR govern the HR data, and you can let the people in research govern the research data, while the folks in IT can just make sure the platform is maintaining its SLAs and rolling up all the reporting. And the third thing we do is we scale out very broadly in a high-performance environment, and this is critical. People say, we want to govern access to the data, but not if it impacts performance. And so we make sure that our deployment, we have different deployment patterns depending upon your configuration to make sure we keep the performance impact under 4%. 2, 3, 4, 5% is acceptable latency if you're going to get additional security on top of that.
Exactly 1 minute left, so let me throw it out to you, Matt Crouse. Do you have a question for our guest, Nick Halsey, CEO of Okira?
Understanding that I've got data stored all over the world in third-party organizations, which we're basically an aggregator of third parties as a franchisor. How does your product help me not only discover that data, but organize that data so that I can deduplicate and I can have fewer data feeds and fewer data sources?
Seconds.
You bet. You can point our crawlers at any data source, regardless of where it's located. So you would just point Okira at those different data sources, and we would come back and tell you what data is out there, what PII in particular is out there, and that will give you the information you need to assess those data resources.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you very much for joining us. We will bid you adieu here, and we are going to look for who is going to be our next contestant who's going to be coming on right now. And we do have a winner here. It is Dimitrios Lazarikos, CEO and co-founder of Blue Lava. He also goes by Laz, as I understand. But Dimitrios, I'm going to say right now, you win for having the best sounding name of any one of our contestants right now. All right. Dimitrios, you just, or should I call you Laz? Which do you prefer?
I'll answer to either one. Laz is probably easier though, right?
Laz, well, I think, did I pull off your first name? Yes?
You did really well. Actually, both really well. Thank you.
All right. Well, Dimitrios, Laz, I saw your presentation. I want to summarize it for the audience. And actually, we've talked about this recently on our podcast. And that is, you are a solution for managing a ludicrously complicated security program, and how to match all the security programs that you have in place to what are the business initiatives and what are the business risks. Do I have that correct?
David, I want to hug you right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we'll give each other virtual hugs.
All right.
All right. So here's my first question to you, and then I'm going to send it out to my two guests. Is one of the concerns that I constantly hear from CISOs when they see some kind of like format like this that gives some kind of scores and ratings is, well, I got to kind of trust their scores and ratings. Where the hell is this coming from? Yeah. So I'm going to ask you, where the hell is this coming from?
Yeah, so the foundation, that's a great question, David. So you think about a program, security program is a holistic program, right? And inside the platform, you have 11 disciplines and 75 capabilities that map to business processes. And everything is around people, process, and technology. The foundation has been built with, by, and for the CISO community. So something that we pride ourselves with at Blue Lava, all operators. And when we developed this and designed it, we pulled in our advisors, our board members, our customers, and their teams. So hundreds of people have had input into the foundation of the platform, the content, the workflow, and how the ratings work using industry best practices and industry information across reporting. I mean, that's, you know, that it is truly built with, by, and for the community.
I'm going to throw this to both of my guests. I'm going to start with you, David Tyburski. What are you doing currently to manage your overall security program, and what would you like to make your life easier, going back to a concern you had at the beginning of the show?
I think we have, from a maturity standpoint, I mean, there's always this question of how do I measure? How do I measure my success? And more about measuring success, how do I quantify a change to know that what I'm about to do is going to make a positive impact? And so I was kind of going to throw that back to Laz and to say, if you're gathering all this information and you're quantifying it against the whole program, how do you then show, if I change X, I'm going to see what result? Yep. So I know that the decisions I'm making are going to be positive to the program as opposed to either stagnant or reduce the effectiveness.
Yes. This is awesome. Okay, so David, I'm going to break it down into 2 parts, right? So the first part is you have the ability to look at where you're spending, where you're underinvesting or overinvesting based off of your program and your business objectives. Further, that's like part 1, right? And that's like, you saw the heat map and you saw some of the data and some of the comments from our customers. They love that part. The next step is, well, let's say you're not going to grow at that 30% example I gave. And you're like, hey, listen, we're only going to grow at 15%. You can then start pulling and pushing and saying, well, wait a minute, I can't make that business objective. So I have to talk to my peers inside the business to demonstrate to them why I'm not going to meet my score and how their decisions are impacting the overall company. And it's actually really elegant because at that point, you can have a business discussion. And remember the 11 disciplines, you're able to go to those groups because you may be accountable. But at the end of the day, you're aligning those business objectives to your program and you can have that discussion. And now it's not a speeds and feeds and and I could say this because I'm an engineer by background, right? I've been in that situation where you go into the geek speak mode and you're like, oh, WAF and alerts and no, I want picture a world where a CISO has the data at their fingertips and the power of a discussion in business terms. That's the end state. And that's what we're seeing with 100% of our customers.
We have just under 2 minutes, actually 1.5 minutes right now. Matt, do you have a question for our guest, Laz, in terms of would something like this make your life easier, just like I asked David?
Sure, only if it was easy to implement and manage. And one of the concerns that I have every time I see a product like this is exactly that. The heaviness, the weight, the administrative effort that it's going to take, because it sounds like we're trying to organize basically the entire business or all of the risk factors of the entire business. How do you address that?
Break it down, great question. We break it down into a simple process. When we onboard a customer, they have the ability to look enterprise-wide. They can look by product, by application, by division. And so they have the flexibility. So, if you think about it, our time to value is in less than hours, right? I mean, it's literally, we set you up and you're up and running in hours. We've had customers look at data in a matter of hours once they're set up and running. Now, it depends on your environment, but you could set it up enterprise-wide and, it's totally configurable by you and your team. But time to value in less than 2 hours. And then what we've seen with our customers, what normally took them literally months, it's now down to days or weeks to start looking at what they have and what they don't have around people, process, and tech.
Awesome, Laz. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, we're going to bid you adieu right now, and I'm going to talk to my 2 guests, David Tyburski, who's the CEO of Wynn Resorts, and Matt Crouse.
Well, thank you for the promotion.
Taco Bell, of course. Of course. I'm expecting a free room soon. And a free burrito. Burrito in my room is what I would like. All right. So now we're going to get to an important part where I'm going to ask you. Now, we don't have the guests on, so there isn't the pressure of being polite to them. So you can be critical if you want, if you need to. But I want to know what you thought of the presentations and what you thought was the most innovative. I know it was hard to see all the presentations, so just from what we heard, what do you think is the most innovative thing, and do you think that security professionals need most desperately? And I will begin the concentration music. What do you think? Begin, David Tyburski.
I thought they all had a place. There's nothing that was something that was just regurgitating an old solution, in my opinion. They're definitely making improvements on things. They're being innovative and addressing needs. The question is it a need that the business has right now, right? So an organization that's not involved in a DevOps scenario, really, how would Zero North play? Somebody who's not mature enough to handle a governance project at that scale, how would Blue Lava play? So I think there's a fit conversation there that has to be within the organization so that it works properly within the business environment that you're in. I mean, from Wynn's perspective, where I'm at, I mean, definitely the Okera data, in my mind, picked up because it was things that were really focused where I'm at today and things that I need to address today, as opposed to, well, that's a nice to have, or we're not really in that business yet.
Okay, so so you're only picking a winner based on what your needs are today? So you're being selfish about this?
Always. I'm always selfish about this stuff.
So the winner again is, claim the winner again on your side?
On my side, I think it was Okera.
Okera. Okay. Okera because of the data center access management solution. Matt Crouse, who do you think was the most innovative and why?
Beginning, I was talking about bringing me a problem that I didn't know that I had. I didn't see that happening with any of these contestants today. These are all problems that I know that I have. So therefore, they're problems that I've already tried to solve or that I already have solved with existing tooling or whatever the case may be. The one that actually stood out to me, agree with David Tyburski, was Okera. And the reason for that is I can solve DevOps vulnerability scanning and integrate that into my developers' Jira ticketing. I've already done that. That plumbing is there. And I can solve infrastructure, or rather security program management. I've already done that, and that reporting is there. But Okera data governance and data security, data discovery really solves a problem that I haven't solved yet, and that I think is a more technically challenging and complex problem for a lot of organizations.
All right. Excellent answers, both of you. And now I'm going to go for Tom Ward, who is going to show us the winners as chosen by the judges, because we actually have official judges. You're not the official judges, although you are critical. Tom, tell us, who are the winners here?
Scientific poll of all the attendees, David. And did I sense a little foreshadowing there in, Matt and David's comments? Maybe.
Possibly.
Yes. So I will start with Zero North, who led us off. And let me preface this and say, there are no losers here, right? Because these all scored very well. These all had favorable responses. So Zero North, starting out at 8.12 on a scale of 1 to 10, an 8.12 for Zero North. All right.
Very impressive.
Yes. So now we're down to Blue Lava and Okera. Okay. So coming in second, as it were. Okay. Again, no real losers here today, because if they were, they wouldn't be on the agenda for the Global CISO Virtual Summit, right? Coming in second at 8.14. So very close and just a shade above.
Neck and neck. I can see one of them at the finish line just literally put their chest out to win.
Yes, that's right. In second position, 8.14 is Blue Lava. Oh, yeah!
Congrats to Blue Lava.
Yeah, so that means that Okera at 9.0 did score the most favorably among the attendees and everyone who voted in our unscientific poll.
We have a winner. Congrats. So the judges and our guests agree that Okera was the winner here. But yes, once again, I mean, all the scores were spectacular for that matter. So I want to thank our guests and our competitors. This is taking us out of the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast. I'm going to let everyone have a last word of my two guests here, Matt Crouse, CISO of Taco Bell, and David Tyburski, CISO at Wynn Resorts. Let me also thank our sponsors, Evanta, and our three competitors, who all did unbelievably well. Zero North, Okera, and Blue Lava. Matt, David Tyburski, any last thoughts, any advice to the vendors out there when approaching a CISO? Especially startup vendors. Let's start with you, David.
Well, the advice I always give is make sure you understand the business, make sure you present the business, and keep up the good work.
Good answer. All right, Matt Crouse, your final comments.
In addition to that, I'd say just never stop innovating, never stop coming up with new ideas, and never stop trying, because there's always ideas that we need to bring to it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I want to thank Evanta again for inviting me to do this. And we will make, hopefully both the video and obviously the audio, you're listening to it right now, will be a special bonus podcast episode of the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast. So, as I always say at the end of the show, thank you for participating, engaging, and listening to the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast.
much for that. I want to just invite everyone to join us over in the Shindig networking platform, and feel free to rate this session on your way out. Thank you so much, and we will have the mentoring and diversity reception in the Shindig networking platform. Join us for free networking and some interactive discussion around mentoring in the cybersecurity space, along with diversity and inclusion and how those things all work together in the large enterprise. Thank you so much, and we'll look for you in the Shindig platform immediately as soon as we log out of here. So head on over. Thank you so much.
Thank you.